If you were to consider the most attractive place to live in terms of quality of life, weather, but also with low cost of living, where would it be? Now, because I deal with people all over the world, I think we have clients from 62 countries now. We help people to relocate to all different countries, to set up companies in all different countries, etc. I get like this really broad base of data about what places people like. And one of the things that I like to pay attention to is not just where people go, because, hey, you might think some place is a good idea, then go there and discover, maybe not so much for me. I like to pay attention to where people stay. And there are a few places that tend to really stand out in the world as being places that people tend to love. And the particular place that we're going to talk about today, I encountered when I was living in Costa Rica. A bunch of people who had lived in Costa Rica said, if they could go over and do it over again, they would set up in this particular country, which for a long time was a place that I think had a bit of stigma and people were a little bit concerned about, but more and more has become popular. Like I said, potentially great weather, people like the culture, low cost of living, not necessarily so great for taxes. We'll talk about that in a second. Reasonable amount of extended stay that people can get in general. Normally you can go there on a lot of different passports, 90 days and extend another 90 days. So you can get about 180 days in there anyway. But today we're going to talk about the Digital Nomad Visa that they brought in, which is going to allow you to stay there for 2 years. And we're going to talk a little bit about the process, what it takes, etc., because there are a lot of people who may want to go to this particular place. And I think you should definitely go and check it out one way or another. So we're going to talk about it. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for being here. Welcome. I am Michael. If you're not familiar, from Offshore Citizen. We are some of the top international tax experts, international relocation experts. We help people to figure out what the best solution for them is in terms of where to relocate, where to set up their company, where to hire staff, where to do international banking, etc., and then actually help them to go and implement those strategies. So if you're interested in any of those things, you can please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's always a link in the description below, or you can send a message through offshorecitizen.net. So thank you for being here. All right, so the country that I'm talking about in this particular case is Colombia. So, as I said, there was a period of time, obviously, sort of the Pablo Escobar-esque era where, lots of drug dealing and violence and all sorts of this sort of thing that I think gave it a stigma, but increasingly it has become popular and, much safer than it was back in the day. Obviously still, or maybe not so obviously to some people, but certainly still a bunch of crime, and so there's different things, it's likely if you have an iPhone, somebody could take it out of your hands and run off with it, and there's little things like that. So, you want to be mindful of how you carry yourself out in any of these countries. But this being said, I've noticed over the years, like a lot of clients would move to Panama and end up actually going and living in Colombia, or they would aim to go and live in someplace like Mexico and maybe end up there, go to Costa Rica, end up there. Lots of people really love Colombia. And there's lots of reasons to appreciate it. It also happens to be a relatively inexpensive part of the world to be in, and so that is pretty cool. The weather, fantastic. It's famous for beautiful women, so for people who are into that, I think they like it. And yeah, just, all around, people tend to have a pretty positive reception. Obviously, no one size fits all, but for a lot of people who are interested in being on sort of a North American time zone, this is especially attractive because there's not that many super attractive places that fit in. I would say maybe one, or definitely maybe top 2 of the places that I hear people actually really like in Latin America as a place in terms of quality of life. There's other factors obviously, but quality of life wise, it is very much appreciated. So they've brought in a digital nomad visa. It is about 30 days to qualify for it once you submit your application. The application is quite simple compared to many of them you can submit online. You only require a little over $600, it's I think 3 million pesos per month in terms of income, so very low income requirements. As I said, 2-year visa available for you. You do need to have medical insurance, and there are some nuances. If your employer happens to work there, you have to have either a business that's abroad or an employer who's abroad in order to qualify, but for many, many people, that shouldn't be a particular issue. You're going to be in a situation where from a tax standpoint, if you do spend more than 6 months there, you're going to become tax resident, and then you're going to be subject to Colombian tax, which is not particularly low. Granted, you can kind of figure out how to navigate that. Maybe there's some planning that can be done there, etc. But yeah, generally not particularly low taxes. However, not super high either if you were to compare it to, say, Scandinavia or something like that. So sort of middle of the road in that regard. And compensated for to some extent by lower cost of living depending on what your income is looking like. It is quite, like I said, quite good in terms of that extended period. There is a weird thing about this digital nomad visa, which is in order to qualify, your country has to have short stay visa access just without special visas. So there's like a list of 98 countries. So you have to be from one of those 98 countries in order to qualify. People from most of the sort of what we'd call Western developed countries, I guess, will fit into that criteria. So Canada, the US, most of Europe, Australia, etc. These people will have no issues. If you're not somebody who is in one of those 98 countries, and I'm not going to list it here, but you can go and look it up, or you can reach out to us if you have questions about it, then there are other visa options that you can go and take advantage of if you were interested in going and living in Colombia. And of course, I always encourage people to go and check it out in advance prior to going there. So yeah, we're excited to have that as one of the new digital nomad visas. I've done some other videos going through, there's I think like 40 different countries now that have digital nomad visas. So while we've seen, say, golden visas shutting down, while we're seeing various other different programs closing down, at least digital nomad visas are opening up the world as countries try and attract people to come and stay there. So if you're interested in any of that, please reach out to us, and I'm going to look forward to seeing you on the next video.